my topics are uh, regarding Republic Act number 8371, the Indigenous Peoples Rights Act of 1996, 1997, or the PR law, specifically sections 21, paragraph 2, and sections 26, and the Republic Act number 6955, otherwise known as the Anti-Mail Order Bride Law. So under Republic Act number 8371, section 21, paragraph 2, it states that the state shall ensure that the fundamental human rights and freedoms as enshrined in the Constitution and relevant international instruments are guaranteed also to indigenous women. Towards this end, no provision in this act shall be interpreted so as to result in the diminution of rights and privileges already recognized and accorded to women under existing laws of general application. This provision basically states that indigenous women are entitled to the same constitutional rights, such as the right to life, liberty, due process, equal protection, education, and participation as all other citizens. So even though they are indigenous, one of the, indigenous uh, people, they have the same rights as any other Filipino citizen. These rights include civil and political rights, such as the right to life, liberty, due process, equal protection, political participation, and freedom of expression, as well as economic, social, and cultural rights, such as access to education, healthcare, livelihood opportunities, and cultural development. So, as we may all know, indigenous people have less access, or even though the state has been trying to make sure or extend these services, such as access to education, healthcare, livelihood opportunities, and cultural development to indigenous people, there's still a gap between indigenous and the non-indigenous people. These rights are also protected under international agreements that the Philippines is a party to, like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Also, in this provision, it stated that, or it says that the PIRA law cannot be read or used in a way that would reduce, weaken, or take away rights that women already have under Philippine laws. For example, under Section 29 of the same law, protection of indigenous culture, traditions, and institutions, it says that the state shall respect, recognize, and protect the rights of ICCs in or IPs to preserve and protect their culture, traditions, and institutions. It shall consider these rights in the formulation and application of national plans and policies. So under this section, while the culture, traditions, and institutions of indigenous peoples are respected and protected, such recognition shall not be interpreted as prevailing over the rights of indigenous women. So even though we respect their culture, their traditions, or institutions, it should not mean that um, uh, their traditions or culture and institutions uh, would violate women's rights, or as we say here, weaken the indigenous women's rights. Other laws are also applicable, of course, to indigenous women, such as the Magna Carta of Women, or A 9710, which provides comprehensive women's rights and protection. So, uh, uh, since it applies to um, uh, women, it should also apply to indigenous women. This was already discussed, I believe, by uh, Mr. John Mark uh, previously. And another is the labor laws, which also protects women workers from discrimination. So these are we know that all of these apply to regular women, and these should also apply to indigenous women. So there shouldn't be any uh, discrimination as to the application of these laws. Under Section 26 of the same Act, it states that ICCIP women shall enjoy equal rights and opportunities with men as regards the social, economic, political, and cultural spheres of life. The participation of indigenous women in the decision-making process in all levels, as well as in the development of society, shall be given due respect and recognition. The state shall provide full access to education, maternal and child care, health and nutrition and housing services to indigenous women. The vocational, technical, professional, and other forms of training shall be provided to enable these women to fully participate in all aspects of social life. As far as possible, the state shall ensure that indigenous women have access to all services in their own languages. So basically, it means that this provision emphasizes the principle of equality between indigenous cultural communities and indigenous peoples, women and men. So specifically for women in this case. So whatever services or rights we provide to non-indigenous women, we should also provide to indigenous women. Same as I mentioned earlier, um, the provision also mandates that indigenous women should not face discrimination or marginalization in any aspect of life. Recognition of indigenous women in decision making process. So just like um, in our society, uh, I'm not sure what to call ourselves, but we're non-indigenous people. The same rights, the same benefits, and other services that our women uh, enjoys. Uh, these should also be enjoyed by indigenous women. Uh, okay. The provision also refers to the state uh, having the obligation to support indigenous women's well-being and empowerment. This includes ensuring that they have access to education so they can develop the skills and knowledge needed to engage in modern society while also preserving their cultural identity. Maternal and child care services, recognizing their unique role in raising children and ensuring future generations' health and nutrition programs tailored to their needs, which are often overlooked due to uh, geographic isolation and lack of resources. So we all know that um, indigenous people usually live remotely or away from society. So s- services such as health and nutrition programs rarely or we have difficulty delivering these services to them. So um, the state has the that obligation to ensure that these services, the same services that our women or uh, uh, women in our society enjoys, indigenous women also enjoys. Oops. Okay, so also housing services to secure safe and adequate living conditions. So um, since well, uh, since indigenous people live among usually remotely and away from society and just among themselves, there's usually a problem with their houses. Some of them usually and traditionally lives in huts or stilt houses. But um, as much as we can, or as much as the state can, we should. Uh, it is its obligation to provide um, uh, support to housing to indigenous people. Okay. Moreover, the state must provide vocational, technical, and professional training so that indigenous women can fully participate in the workforce, entrepreneurship, governance, and other aspects of community life. This ensures that they are not confined to traditional roles, but can also engage in modern economic and social opportunities. So I think there was already a case before, and I think it was in Subic, where an Aita woman graduated in education. So uh, uh, sir, the state um, uh, is obligated to also provide education to IP or uh, sa hatod pa i-promote nga mag ano tara mag eskwela mag-attend ng trainings or anything makaka-improve it era kinabuhi so they can also uh, join the national workforce so ang yan direhera ma-isolate ha era community la. Okay, and the provision also acknowledges the importance of language and cultural sensitivity. By that, the state ensures that services are should ensure that services are made available in indigenous women's own languages. Uh, the state upholds their dignity and helps break down barriers that prevents them from accessing crucial support systems. Language is a central part of cultural identity, so delivering services in their mother tongue also affirms their heritage while making programs more effective and inclusive. So um, they're not that familiar with the services or how the government provides services to indigenous people. But one of the um, what the provision here wants the state to do is that we should also engage them in their own language para waray language barrier. Tapos kung ano man yung services, pinigap legal services. So I guess may daghap iton I think uh, may da talaga iton nga um, iton mga IPs dere maaram iton balaod or uh, doesn't know their rights kay well, our language, the language that we use is usually English. May dagad din po kuha niya other languages like and mga common languages or dialects and Tagalog, Bisaya, or Waray-Waray. Pero since these indigenous people have their own languages, may language barrier. So diri gyapon naka avail hini mga services nga dapat na 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 na-enjoy gyap nira as a part of the community. Okay, so before I go to the next topic, there were only two provisions for this act that I was tasked to discuss. Are there any questions from the class? Anyone? Okay, so I think I can continue. So for the next topic, it's about Republic Act number 6955 or the Anti-Mail Order Bride Law. So under this law, Section 1 states that it is the policy of the state to ensure and guarantee the enjoyment of the people of a decent standard of living. Towards this end, the state shall take measures to protect Filipino women from being exploited in utter disregard of human dignity in their pursuit of economic upliftment. So in this provision basically acknowledge that the state or says that the state acknowledges that poverty is a driving force behind why many Filipino women fall prey to such schemes as in this act, the mail order bread. So um, we know that a lot of our fellow country women para makakuha green pasture is very susceptible here to schemes like ito na makakasawahirahin foreigner para maka kanto ibang kuan ibang bansa. So may da mga schemes nga sugad dinhi na nagkokosa ira nga maging vulnerable kay tungod na makoreanan ira because of poverty. They are easily exploited na magkuan madarahin na yung mga sugad ng mga schemes. So as the state's policy, it tries to guarantee measures for a decent standard of living. So the state can commit to addressing poverty and creating alternatives that uplift women without subjecting them to exploitation. So uh, currently in our current status, we know that the Philippines still has a high rate of poverty. So marap kita nga damo lagi hapiton makinureano. But it is uh, the policy of the state to try and make sure that everyone, including women, um, uh, 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 especially poor women that are very vulnerable to these kinds of exploitations, are provided with services or measures that may help them get out of poverty. So, uh, like uh, work, which is I know nga kulang lagyap, especially din ato na mga probinsya. But yeah, that's the goal. That's one of the policy of the state to provide a better standard of living for all Filipinos, especially women. So they don't become victims of schemes like this. Okay, so next under section 2, it states here that pursuant thereto, it is hereby declared unlawful for a person, natural juridical association, club, or any other entity to commit directly or indirectly any of the following acts. Um, One, to establish or carry on a business which has its purpose the matching of Filipino women for marriage to foreign nationals, either on a mail order basis or through personal introduction. Two, to advertise, publish, print, or distribute or cause the advertisement, publication, printing, or distribution of any brochure, flyer, or any propaganda material calculated to promote the prohibited acts in the preceding subparagraph. Three, to solicit, enlist, or in any manner attract or induce any Filipino woman to become a member in any club or association whose objective is to match women for marriage to foreign nationals, either on a mail order basis or through personal introduction or for a fee. Four, to use the postal service to promote the prohibited acts in subparagraph 1 hereof. And B, for the manager or officer in charge or advertising manager of any newspaper, magazine, television or radio station or other media or of any advertising agency, printing company, or other similar entities to knowingly allow or consent to the acts prohibited in the preceding paragraph. So under this section, basically it means that uh, no person or entity is allowed to establish or run businesses that arrange marriages between Filipino women and foreign nationals. So I'm not actually familiar na may dangay ang sugad din but I in my research may dahil ni sugad ha I think oh yeah ha Russia ha Ukraine nga may nanira kuan ban dating sites tapos um ikin uh any kuan any nga mga well foreigners liwat what they do um is to go to these websites and may na dito parang catalog tapos mangingitihara kung hinutira itira ng titipuhan tapos once they pick the woman magchat-chat hira tapos itong na reply actually is a company so dire at the personally nga baba and woman niya nakantuhan catalog mismo ma-reply tapos ini yung mga company is nag arrange rahen um parang tour pero well I forgot the term pero parang marriage tour something like that uh, may groups of foreigners nga makanto nira for example Ukraine tapos may nira parang may nira mga events wherein igmamatch sira adto nga mga usually nira mga gin may message ka nakanto website so pero besides that besides sa nira kuan in case nira maruyag agihaphan babae may da panira choice sa ibang kuan ibang gihapon babae dito itong grupo so may da so ganito here parang bagan di ako familiar pero I guess since this law was made I guess there were cases like this before nagiging prominent in nga kaso so this law was made to prevent that kind of business. So uh, ay, so here these businesses often under the guise of introduction services or pen pal services So I guess this was before, and also pa ang pen pal, exploit women by presenting them as products in catalogs, websites, or agencies. So like na akong you mentioned, may dasugad din websites and agencies na nagma-matchmaking an era women to foreigners. Uh, Dere nila ako familiar kun ang mga kaso din. So such practices are banned whether they happen through traditional mail advertisements or personal introductions. So para hello, sorry. Para prevent talaga ini, specify na talaga nga dahil through through the traditional mail since nakadian pagpepenpal upod nagyap an advertisements then personal introductions as a prohibited act, which is in violation of the mail or anti-mail order bride law. So in the previous or in the um, uh, provision that I've been discussing, advertising or distributing brochures, flyers, magazines, online content, or any form of media that promotes these prohibited activities is unlawful. This is to prevent the normalization or glamorization of such exploitative arrangements. Not sure if Facebook o may daong sugadin eh. Liwat ako familiar kung may since waray man liwat news about it siguro waray. Okay, so next. It is illegal to solicit or encourage Filipino women to join clubs or associations whose objectives include matching them with foreign nationals for marriage in exchange for a fee. Um, I think naging kuan ini, naging prevalent ito may kuan dapat Pampanga. May mga clubs. I think before liwat ang mga I guess before ipasa ini nga law, Manila liwat ang mga clubs, ang mga clubs dito nagiging prevalent ini. So yeah, again prohibit na ini with the passage of this law. So such recruitment often preys on women's financial vulnerability and is a form of exploitation disguised as an opportunity. So yeah, so since yun nga, makinurinit damo nga kuan Pilipino, labi na mga ini mga kababayan nagiging vulnerable hira it sugad din yung mga kuan mga uh, uh, tawag yun scheme. So labot lang nakita gihapan kuan and ini nga mga matchmaking bagan ginahimo nga commodity itong mga ito daton mga uh, Filipino women. So bagan na degrade gihapit era kuan itong era pagkatao. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, even the postal system cannot be used to promote or facilitate mail order marriages. So, um, so any communication na talaga whether personal or through any other means of promoting this type of scheme is being prohibited under this law. So by extending the prohibition to communications, the law blocks attempts to bypass regulation through correspondence. So any method talaga nga magka-communicate ito itong foreigner and itong Filipino woman para uh, para hindi yung scheme is prohibited na talaga. Okay, so and uh, paragraph B or uh, provision I mentioned states that managers and officers of newspapers, magazines, television, radio stations, printing companies, or advertising agencies are also liable if they knowingly allow or consent to such advertisements or promotions. The postal system cannot be used to promote or facilitate mail order uh, marriages. Uh, para di rin na talaga magamit bisan itong media, ini yung mga tag-iya itong mga newspapers, media, television, radio stations, or magazines, any printing companies. They are also being held liable para diriliwat hira um, maging uh, kumbaga tool para ma-commit ini nga kuan ini nga mga schemes. Okay, so oops. Under Section 3, it says here that in case of violation of this act by an association, club, partnership, corporation, or any other entity, the incumbent officers thereof who have knowingly participated in the violation of this act shall be held liable. So I guess nahanap din ang kuan ang doctrine of corporate ano to? Corporate veil, so napipiers and corporate veil. So dari la bisan siguntaan uh, corporate entity and naging involved uh, patigihap and officers itong corporation magiging liable if naging involved tira niya so ini yung kuan mga schemes. And under Section 4, any person found guilty by the court to have violated any of the acts herein prohibited shall suffer an imprisonment of not less than 6 years and 1 day, but not more than 8 years, and a fine of not less than 8,000 pesos, but not more than 20,000 pesos. Provided that if the offender is a foreigner, he shall be immediately deported and barred forever from entering the country after serving his sentence and payment of fine. So I think this was already amended kay may hanalo ini akuan law. But yeah, the minimum or if a person's found to have committed uh, or violated this law shall be imprisoned for not less than 6 years or basically between 6 to 8 years and be fined by um, between 8,000 to 20,000 and for foreigners madideport tira. Yeah. Okay, so okay, so yeah, same as what I mentioned earlier. There's a provision for foreigners. So aton mga nakikipag-communicate and Filipino women um, na nagko-commit in violation for this law is immediately deported after serving the jail time of between 6 years and 1 day to 8 years, and a permanent ban from re-entering the Philippines. So di na hira balik pa lang na Pilipinas in case maka-violate hira hining law. So I mentioned earlier that this act was already amended. It was amended in Republic Act number 10906, the otherwise known as the Anti-Mail Order Spouse Act, and the penalty has already been increased. So imprisonment can now be up to 15 years and a fine of 500,000 pesos to 1 million. Abettors or cooperators, same would be penalized with the same penalty as the principal offenders. So, aton uh, mga agency, like I mentioned earlier, and companies or anyone na magpa-facilitate ini uh, a uh, mail order bride scheme, mag mape-penalize kaya pera same as aton foreigner or aton nagkukuan talaga ko-convince talaga ang babae yung uh, uh, communicate, correspond to foreigners for marriage. Um, also, uh, under the said provision, if committed by a syndicate, meaning three or more persons, or a large scale, three or more victims, the imprisonment could be up to 20 years and the fine of 2 million to 5 million. Right. So there were other provisions for penalties that were added in the act that I mentioned. But since that's not part of my report, will not be included. May napapiperang provisions nga to gin-add as a penalty. Okay, so next is under Section 5, nothing is act shall be interpreted as a restriction on the freedom of speech and of association for purposes not contrary to law as guaranteed by the Constitution. So basically, it says that while this act criminalizes mail order bride businesses and related exploitative acts, it does not intend to curtail constitutional freedoms such as the right to free expression and the right to form or join associations. So this refers to an advertise, whether through media, through flyers, to prints, ngan pag organize in mga events which bawal la dun hini nga sugad niya kung sugad nga activity it kinbubuhat. So citizens can still freely express opinions, beliefs, or personal preferences about marriage, culture, or relationships. For example, a person writing an article about intercultural marriages or a group discussing women's rights issues is fully protected under freedom of speech. So, basta nila term ito niya, na bubugaw, it's permitted. Di la makuha nito niya, to convince nimo iton isang babae nga makipag-contact ini nga foreigner ay kilala for marriage. So yes, what this provision prohibits is speech that promotes or facilitates exploitative practices such as advertisements or propaganda offering women as commodities for marriage. Filipinos remain free to form and join organizations for lawful purposes such as cultural exchange, education, social support, or professional collaboration. However, associations or clubs organized with the hidden intent of facilitating mail order marriages, recruitment, or trafficking fall squarely under the prohibition referred to under this provision of the anti-mail order bribe law. Okay. Under Section 6, all laws, decrees, orders, or instructions, or rules and regulations or parts thereof, inconsistent with this act are hereby repealed or modified accordingly. So this is the repealing clause of the said act. And under Section 7, this act shall take effect upon its publication for 2 consecutive weeks in the newspaper of general circulation. So that's the effect. That's when the provision for the effectivity of the law. So that's it. That's the end of my report.